Patrick's Day! Getting my green on. Though admittedly, this is actually my husband's. This week, as part of the KonMari Method, I tackled papers. And admittedly, I was dreading it. So I wanted to share Marie Kondo's #1 rule when it comes to paper. Also, lots of tips that have proved invaluable to me. And as usual, I will be answering one of your questions, how you should subcategorize papers. Let's go. So yeah, wasn't really looking forward to this one at all. I'm not really sure why. We don't actually have that many papers coming into the house because a lot of our statements and bills and stuff are all online. But I don't know, there's just something about papers that is so tedious. Having to go through each and every one while also scanning the contents to see if there's anything important in there. Truth be told, I only did it because I knew I would have to upload a video this week. Who knew YouTube could actually be a source of productivity? Marie Kondo's rule of thumb for paper is to discard everything. Kind of the opposite of what she usually preaches, which is about focusing on what you're keeping instead of focusing on what you're getting rid of. But I totally agree with her for this category. We generally keep way more papers than we actually need. It's one of those big, oh, I might need this information someday categories. And paper is deceptively small. It's hard to imagine that it takes up much space because it's so tiny and innocent until you're pulling boxes and boxes of it off the shelves. Crafty bastard. So I went in with that mentality that I was going to get rid of every single scrap of paper unless there was a very compelling reason not to, such as I need to keep it for legal reasons like taxes, or if it was a notebook. Took me about 10 minutes to pull out all of the paper. That's probably on the quick side, but again, remember I've already done the KonMari category once, so everything was pretty much in one place, the home that I'd given them last time, which was on some shelving in the office. But there were still some assorted papers scattered throughout the house, so I definitely need some form of inbox system. I did have one, but I had it up in the office, and honestly, I'm not really in there all that often, so I think I'm going to have to move it to the kitchen because I spend most of my time in here, and it's where I do most of my work. There was some overlap between paper and stationery, so I just did a judgment call on it. I included most things like small notebooks, scrapbook paper, writing sets, things like that, but I didn't include sticky notes, all those sort of things. Like I said, total judgment call, no right or wrong. Anything I missed this time around will get done when I come to kimono. Despite my initial terror, it actually only took me about an hour and a quarter to go through them. So all things considered, and having seen how long it's taken some people, I ain't complaining. But I did have a pending pile. So Marie Kondo says that you can have a separate pile of papers that need to be actioned before they can be dumped or filed, like an invitation that you need to RSVP to. I also used it for things that would have slowed me down and broken my momentum. So things like notebooks that were full of notes and old planner pages. It would have taken me far too long during the initial process to go through every page of those to see if there was anything important in them. So I just put them aside. I went through that pile the following day, and that took me about 2 hours because even though the pile was reasonably small, it still required, actioning some things. So I had to maybe log some information somewhere or move things to a different location, that sort of thing. So yeah, that took a while. Still, in the grand scheme of things, not too bad. Honestly, I didn't think I'd get rid of that many papers because, as I said at the outset, we don't really have that many papers coming in. And also, I did this category last year, so yeah. But, and this is just a very rough estimate based on the scientific eyeballing method, because obviously I wasn't going to go through and count everything, but I got rid of about 40% of my papers. 40%. A lot of it was actually notepads. I didn't think I could get rid of them last time because notepads do actually spark joy for me because I use them a lot, because I write a lot. But when I actually went through them again, a lot of them had, you know, like very poor quality paper, you know, like really rough, or they had a really wide rule on them, and I much prefer a smaller rule because my writing is really small, teeny tiny. So yeah, they made up a huge chunk. So now for tips, I have a lot of them. Prepare yourself, okay? Papers will take a long time, so be prepared, have a drink and some snacks with you. And for the love of God, get comfortable. It's bad enough that you're gonna have to go through about a decade of bank statements without doing your back into. Take plenty of breaks and do it over the course of a few days or even weeks if you need to. Be ruthless and really do stick to the discard everything rule of thumb. Obviously there are exceptions, but if you look at every piece of paper with the mindset that you're definitely getting rid of it, it really helps. Assume that the before pile is actually the discard pile and only retrieve things that are valuable or irreplaceable. Dump anything that you can get a copy of if you really need it. That goes for utility bills, bank statements, all of that stuff. And while you're at it, switch everything over to e-statements so they're all available online. For user manuals, just get rid of them. Honestly, when was the last time you referred to them? Exactly. These days, user manuals are available online, and let's face it, if you have a problem, you're just going to Google it or you're going to call the company directly. You're not going to flip through 50 foreign languages just to get to the troubleshooting page. And you know that when you get there, it's either not going to have your exact problem or it's just going to tell you to call the company anyway. So save yourself the hassle and dump them. If you really must keep one for some unfathomable reason, then do what I do and rip out the pages that have the languages that you don't understand. By doing that, you will find that you can reduce a 100-page manual down to about 10 pages. It's a great space saver. You could also scan things if you're so inclined. So that's great for, you know, things like statements if you really don't feel like you can part with them or it's particularly difficult for you. For me, scanning brings me no joy, none whatsoever. I'd rather give up a bit of shelf space. But if you don't mind it and you can keep the files organized on your computer, then go right ahead. Don't let anything slow you down. Going through papers is time consuming enough as it is, so if something is going to take more than just a few seconds to scan, put it aside. If it's something that you suspect might be sentimental, like a letter, put it aside. If it's something that requires action, you guessed it, put it aside. You can go through all of that stuff later. Right now, you just need to tame the beast. As for subcategorizing papers, don't bother your arse. Just grab a pile and get going. Honestly, you'll spend endless hours subcategorizing them, so just don't do it. I only subcategorized when I was done, so separating what was left into stuff that sparked joy, stuff that needed to be kept for legal reasons like tax stuff, my pending pile, and then shred and recycle. By the by, top tip if you have a lot of stuff to shred and you can't for some reason just burn the lot of it. Most papers will only have the confidential information on a small part, usually the top, so things like an identification number, a telephone number, things like that. To save yourself a lot of time and to stop your shredder from burning out, just tear off the confidential bit and shred that and put the rest in the recycling. Your shredder will thank you. And that's another category done and dusted. Let me know in the comments below which category you are on and if you have done papers, how you found it. The next category is kimono, but that's going to take me a few weeks to do, so that won't be next week's video. Instead, next week I will be sharing a folding video, much requested. So if there is some particular item of clothing you would like to see me fold the KonMari way, then leave it in the comments and I will cover it if I can. Until then, have a great St. Patrick's Day. Gur míle maith agaibh agus feici mé sibh sigalua. Slán!